Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, and my co-host Justin Baker and I, on today's episode, will be running through the top 10 Florida Panthers of all time. I know that you were sitting there thinking today, I really want to list the top 10 Florida Panthers of all time. And so we're going to do it. Top 10 Florida Panthers. If you haven't listened to our other top 10s of players on different teams throughout the National Hockey League, go back and listen to them. The great thing is they're not time sensitive, so you find your favorite team or a couple teams you're interested in hearing, you can go back and listen to them. They're all cataloged. Just hit the subscribe button and subscribe so that you can catch all our new episodes. And if you didn't hear the top wingers or top centers, goalies, we did all those too. So, yes, we love our lists here on Overtime Hockey Talk. Justin, as we jump in, let's do it. Let's talk about our just missed. And
we always do.
Go for it. Florida Panthers, team that's been around since 1993.
Yeah, really? Yeah. I forget about that when they came in. So my just missed, I got a couple forwards, a couple defensemen. I got Ray Whitney, Nathan Horton. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Nathan, what are you doing over there, Nathan?
I should probably just leave and come back later when you're done with this list. Robert Svela.
Oh, Robert Svela,
sorry, yes. And Ed Jovanovski.
Okay. Yep. All good players. Only one of them made my list.
Okay.
Out of those guys. I just missed Stephen Weiss. He misses my list. He was a good player for them, but never made the playoffs with them except I think once that year that the Islanders beat them in overtime. And just never really felt like he was actually that good. He was just on a really bad team. Rob Niedermeyer misses my list as well. And Evgeny Dadonov, thought about putting him on there. He's actually played over 200 games for the Panthers and has played quite well, but misses my list. And remember, 200 games is a lot of games for the Panthers. The most games anybody played actually is Stephen Weiss. He played 654 games for this Panthers team. So you play 240 games, you're in the top 50 players. So it's a newer team. With that said, you're number 10.
My number 10. Okay. Stephen Weiss, right?
All right.
Major just missed. He just barely slipped into mine. Again, like you talked about, never really made the playoffs, but he produced, though. I mean, he was still a pretty decent player for them. And then
he was a 20-goal guy.
Yeah.
Kind of had some injury history. And I think they took him fourth overall in 2001.
Yeah, went pretty high, and that's why the Detroit Red Wings gave up some pieces to get him, and I was a little pissed about that. Still, I'm a little sour about that trade.
He never had more than 61 points, and 28 goals was his career high for goals. Now, granted, he really wasn't playing he didn't have a whole lot around him.
No.
But it just wasn't enough for me to go, all right, he really wasn't a huge significant piece to any solid team at any point. So.
No, and there weren't a lot of solid Florida Panther teams. I mean, if we're being honest, so
that is very fair.
Yeah.
Basically, they went to the Stanley Cup Finals their third year, and that's their life. My number 10 is the all-time leading scorer for the Florida Panthers, and that is Olli Jokinen.
Wow, only at number 10 though.
419 points in 567 games. He was taken third overall by the LA Kings, but went over to the Florida Panthers pretty quickly after he was traded to the New York Islanders, and then the Islanders traded him to the Florida Panthers. So,
was he part of that Luongo deal too, where he went from the Islanders to?
He might have been.
I think he was.
But yeah, Olli Jokinen. I mean, again, he had a 91 point season and an 89 point season for this team. So, see, to me, and a 71. So, 3 seasons where he had 90, 80, and 70 point, basically 2 90-point seasons. Those are some pretty significant years. And so, at some point, he really was the best player on the Panthers, and it meant something.
Right, yeah.
They didn't ever go to the playoffs with him, though.
No, they really had nothing. I mean, they literally had nothing, and I mean, he still managed to produce some good points, which is impressive, and so that's why he's a little higher up on my list. But
Okay, so you're number 9.
Number 9 for me is Keith Yandel, current Florida Panther. I think, to be quite honest, when you talk about pure talent on the offensive side of the puck, he is probably the best defenseman this team has ever had in that aspect. They haven't had a ton of just good defensemen in terms of just offensive guys, but Keith Yandel, coming from Phoenix, Arizona, whatever you want to call it, then bless you, to New York, and then finding his way to Florida. He's produced. I mean, and he's only getting better every year. 41, 56, 62 points. Not off to the hottest of starts now. I mean, 5 points in 12 games, but for a defenseman, that's still pretty freaking good, unless your name's John Carlson. So,
that's true.
For me, number 9.
Okay, my number 9 is a defenseman as well. It's a guy that was taken, I believe, 3rd overall in 2002.
Okay.
It is Jay Bouwmeester.
I like it.
Taken just behind Rick Nash and Kerry Lettinen. So definitely
company.
Definitely
right.
A nice little pickup, because after him was Yanni Pitkinen, Ryan Whitney, Scotty Upshaw, and then Joffrey Lupul. But Jay Bouwmeester has played the most games out of that class. He's played almost 1,200 games. Now for the Florida Panthers, I mean, it's not like he was a world changer when he was there. I mean, he played for them for a while, but he's probably the best stay-at-home defenseman they ever had. They weren't a great team when he was there, but he was still a good defenseman. And I think a list of Florida Panthers is incomplete to me without Jay Bouwmeester, because of the way that he at least conducted himself while he was there. He is a good defenseman. He just doesn't put up a ton of points. And even so, he still put up 203 points in 471 games. So it's not like he's over here putting up 89 points in 500 games. He's not. Oh gosh, why can't I think of his name on the Washington Capitals?
John Carlson?
No.
Oh,
no, guy who doesn't get any points.
Oh,
can't think of his name.
Carl Alsner, who used to play,
who
is not playing anymore.
Guy who scored it. He scored an overtime winner in the playoffs last year.
Why the freak can I think?
It's going to bother me. It's okay. We'll figure it out, and it'll be okay. But
let's move on.
Who is your number 8?
Number 8 for me is Jaromir Jagr.
Okay.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys that really, he made an impact while he was there. I mean, 130 points and 180, I think 81 games. But unfortunately, just not a whole lot of playoff success with this team. There was really, again, not a lot of pieces around him. They did go to the playoffs once, but he did manage to put up only 2 points in 6 games. But
Brooks Orpik.
There it is.
I know someone listening was like, "You dumb idiots! It's Brooks Orpik." Yeah, Brooks Orpik.
Yeah, but Jagr, 3 seasons with Florida. I mean, well, 2.5 really, if you want to call it that. It was a 20-game stint at the deadline or whatever. Yeah, he's a guy who he was fine during his time there. Not like otherworldly, but he still produced, and he was just fun to watch there. And I enjoyed watching him play with Barkov a little bit, and wish he had maybe hung around for another season instead of going to Calgary, but whatever.
And then just disappeared off the face.
Right.
He's actually still playing.
He is. Yeah, just not in America.
My number 8 is really probably a guy that you think about when you think of the Panthers in the 90s going to the Stanley Cup Finals, and that is Scott Mellanby.
Okay, my number 7.
So, yeah, I mean, he had some really nice seasons for the Panthers. He had 70 points one year, 32 goals, scored 30 goals a couple times, and he was just, it's not like he was the big point producer. Obviously, he's putting up pretty good points. But he always 160, 170 penalty minutes, 149. Like, this guy was a fighter, and at the same time, though, he could play. And I think that when you think of that 1996 Florida Panthers team that really had no business in the Stanley Cup Finals, they somehow beat a Pittsburgh Penguins team that had Mario Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr, like...
I still don't know. Oh, wait, John Van Briesbroek, that's how.
Yes, John Van Briesbroek, who is higher on my list a little bit. He's actually number 7.
Okay.
We can get to John Van Briesbroek.
Might as well, because Mellanby's my number 7. So.
Okay. So John Van Beesbrook, though, when you look at his all-time record with the team, not too hot. 106 wins with 108 losses. So it, pretty average. Probably more speaks towards the team that was in front of him. But he had some unbelievable years in the playoffs. A 2.25 goals against average and a 9.32 save percentage for this team. He's the reason why they went to the finals. He was 5'8".
Is he really that short? I did not know that.
Yes, and he's a Detroit-born guy.
He is. I did know that. Yeah, that's crazy though. Wow, 5'8". And back then too, like small goaltenders weren't in demand. Like you had to be 5'11", 5'12" at 6 foot or whatever, 5'14". I don't care, but you had to be tall. You couldn't be short. I mean, that stand up and that butterfly style at the time that was starting to come in, like you had to.
He was the first pick in the expansion draft for the Florida Panthers, first overall.
That makes sense. He had some good seasons in New York
with the Rangers. Yeah. Who's your number 6?
My number 6 is Van Beesbrook.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So
How about your number 6?
My number 6 is a guy who missed your list. He is the highest scoring Panther defenseman of all time. It is Robert Schwela, 290 points. He also he fought a little bit. He was kind of your kind of he could do it all kind of defenseman. I think that he had 57 points one year, 45, 43. He was always putting up usually around 40 points in a year. And really, I mean, if we're honest, was he anything like crazy special? No, but he played for this team 573 games. He led them to the Stanley Cup Finals. Like, he was a part of that team. I think that has to speak to something. Like, whereas same with Stephen Weiss, he wasn't the greatest player, or he was fine. He was the best player on a bad team, but at least Schwela went to the playoffs. He made an impact. He didn't put up big points by any means in the playoffs, but
no, he was never a big point producer. So
no. For a guy taken in the 4th round, did pretty well for himself.
I'd say so. 500 games in this league,
and yeah. He is a guy that I think if you talk to Florida Panthers fans from back then, they'll tell you like who is the defenseman. They'll talk about Robert Schwela. He could move the puck. He was a good transition guy. So
okay,
for a team lacking in defensemen, putting Robert Schwela on the list. Into the top 5.
Top 5. All right. My number 5, Olli Jokinen. A little lower on your list,
okay,
but
yeah.
Former captain of this team. And I think during his era, the early, that whole early 2000s-ish time for this team where there wasn't a lot of success, not a lot of playoff trips, not a lot of big point producers. He was the face of this franchise, right? He and another guy on my list a little higher up were basically like the guys that brought this team into, the current era and where they're hoping to get back, I guess. And so right now for me at number 5, Olli Jokinen.
Okay. My number 5 is Jaromir Jagr.
Okay.
I'll tell you why.
Yeah,
this
please.
Is why I have him up.
Why he's a little higher.
Obviously, like, he was fine when he was there. He did produce at a 718 points per game. So nothing to bat an eye at. He, to me, took Huberdeau and Barkov under his wing, and I think maybe more than that, but specifically the guys that he played with. And I really think Barkov is the player he is today because of Jagr. Not necessarily the type of player that he is in the ice, but maybe the man that he is and
the leader,
the type of leader that he is. Like, I don't think that you can quantify what Jagr did for those guys. I don't know if Barkov would be a pushing 100-point type of player, and same with Huberdeau if they hadn't played with Jagr. And so I put him at number 5 because potentially I think when all is said and done, Barkov isn't the top player on my list, but he probably will be when all is said and done. And I think the reason why is maybe because of Jagr. I don't know if he ends up being that good if it's not for playing with Jaromir Jagr.
Okay. I'm not angry at that because I grew up watching that. As a Detroit fan, we've been privileged to watching Steve Yzerman pass the torch to guys like, Datsuk and Zetterberg giving it to Larkin.
Even Lidstrom to some extent.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so you see the importance of these leaders, and not necessarily their production on the ice, but just what they bring intangibly wise. And so, yeah, I get it. That's totally fine.
Okay, you're number 4.
Jonathan Huberdeau.
As is mine.
Good. Yeah, number 3 all-time scoring.
Number 3 all-time, 6th all-time points per game. And, yeah, I mean, he's 6th all-time, 7th all-time in goals. So, yeah, I mean, he's on our top wingers, so he better probably be on this list, because how many top wingers has Florida had?
He and another guy on my list a little higher up above him are probably going to be the top 2 scorers for this franchise when it's all said and done.
I think so, yeah. And he's a little bit ahead of Barkov, but Huberdeau, probably the most underrated left winger in the league. If you play in Florida, you're just going to be underrated.
Absolutely.
Like, let's just go ahead and throw that out. If you play in Florida, or if you play in like Anaheim
or Arizona,
underrated.
Yeah.
But there's just not enough good things to say about Huberdeau, and even I feel like I don't really get to watch him very much, because I don't necessarily go out of my way to watch Panthers games very often. And if he were playing for Philadelphia, would we maybe appreciate him a little bit more? Probably. Okay, you're number 3. This is where the list gets interesting.
It does, yeah. My number 3 is Pavel Bure.
Okay.
Yeah. The best player in terms of point per game production. The only one,
like, by far.
Yeah, the only one above a point per game this franchise ever has had, which is just odd. And that's even like guys who have played like 20 or 10 games. So, but the reason maybe he's not number 2, I mean, I've seen him number 1 on a whole bunch of lists, and the only reason he isn't, up there in the top 2, I think, for me, is just because there hasn't been any playoff success. He's been to the playoffs once, 4 games, in and out, 4 points. I mean, yeah, okay, cool, put up a point per game, but
and
who
4 games. Lost to that year. The Stanley Cup final, the winners was the New Jersey Devils.
Oh, right, yeah,
They swept them. The New Jersey Devils in that series Scott Stevens scored a goal 5-on-3 where they were the 3.
I forgot about that.
It does not happen very often, but that happened in the freaking playoffs.
Yeah, that's where it shouldn't happen.
Bure, though, a 58 and a 59 goal season, and he scored 58 goals in 74 games.
Yeah, freaking amazing.
In like the trap era. So, yeah, pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, he was like the best skater, the Connor McDavid of his era in terms of skating.
Yeah.
Like, he could do it better than anybody.
He just eventually had so much injury problems. He had like a bad back or bad knees or something like that. But yeah, he also is my number 3.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, let's see if our lists are any different.
Yeah.
Who do you have at number 1?
Roberto Luongo.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also have Roberto Luongo at number 1. I can't. He never won any trophies there.
I don't know, which is sad, but
he's going to be a Hall of Fame goal. He's going to be the one without a Vezina.
He is. But he also is getting his number retired, right? The only Florida Panther in history, which has got to speak volumes in terms of when you think of these lists. And, when I look back at his time in Vancouver, right, and he was up there, many times you could talk about him being a top 5 goaltender of the league, so many years. But the problem is like he was Florida when he was there, his first stint. And then when he had the opportunity to go back, he's like, this is the only team I want to be with. Mm-hmm. And Florida was like, yeah, we want you. And that spoke volumes to me about what this franchise thought about him and what he meant to this franchise. Because early on when he was there, they were crap. They were absolute garbage.
Dude, he had a year where he had like a 93.0 save percentage. Right. 931 save percentage. And he still had a 2.43 goals against average.
I know.
Like, just shows you how bad that team is. One year with the Panthers, he played 75 games.
He played 70 games on multiple occasions.
He also played 76 with Vancouver.
Right. Yeah, that's back before you had to have a backup, so.
Yeah, you legitimately didn't have to have a backup.
Right.
75 games.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then obviously at number 2, Sasha Barkov. This is a guy who, to me, is going to be the franchise's all-time leading point guy when it's all said and done. He's only 20 points behind Huberdeau, but he's played 50 less games. So to me, I think Barkov is going to drive
I think at the end of this year, both Huberdeau and Barkov will be the 2 leading scorers of this team. Barkov would need He needs 60 points, 61 more points, and he's the leading. He'll eclipse Olli Jokinen.
Yeah, assuming both of them are healthy, they'll get that. No
and
problem.
Hubert only needs 49, 40,
Should be
48.
a problem.
So yeah, they'll both be the leading scorers by the end of this. So that's another reason Olli Jokinen not high on my list because he's about to get bumped down. So is Stephen
About
Watts.
to get bumped
All these numbers are about to change, which is kind of cool. But all right, well that's our top 10 Florida Panthers of all time, and you know there'll be another one next week. So who should we do next week? We tend to go back and forth between the conferences, so we'll go Western Conference, and maybe we do a team that came and went and came again.
Came and went and came again, huh?
Yeah, the Winnipeg Jets.
All right.
We'll do we haven't done the Arizona Coyotes yet either. But when we do the Arizona Coyotes, we'll only do Arizona Coyotes. We won't do Winnipeg Jets.
No Solani, huh?
No Solani.
All right, fair enough.
And so Winnipeg Jets, though, for now, for this iteration, we'll do current and former Winnipeg Jets.
That's fair.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's our show. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. We hope you enjoy watching hockey, and we'll talk to you guys very soon.